The story has sent shockwaves through Canada's political and economic circles. Stellantis, a major automaker once celebrated for bringing jobs and billions in investment to Ontario, has now chosen Donald Trump's America over Canadian workers. Despite receiving generous incentives, Canadian subsidies, and promises to build the future of EV manufacturing on Canadian soil, the company is packing up and moving production south. This time, however, Canada isn't staying silent. Prime Minister Mark Carney made it clear that those who betray Canadian workers and prioritize U.S. politics over principle will face real consequences. When a reporter tried to corner him, suggesting that Canada's contracts were weak and unenforceable, Carney didn't flinch. He shut down the question cold, calling it categorically wrong and reminding everyone that, under his watch, Canada's word carries weight. If you want, I can also make a more dramatic, news-story version that reads like a headline-grabbing report. Do you want me to do that?
Good morning, Prime Minister Barbara with iPolitics. Just passing along a question from my editor, Marco Vigliotti. So Stellantis threatened to pull out of the Nexstar project in Windsor back in 2023 because the U.S. passed legislation allowing for even more generous subsidies. I understand you were not Prime Minister then, but it seems like these contracts are not terribly binding on the automakers.
No.
So is it a mistake to broker deals promising billions to companies to build here, knowing that experience suggests that they can just flee or demand more cash without much in the way of consequences?
Okay, well, first off, I know you're passing on a question. You can pass on this answer back to your editor. That's not a fair, an accurate description of the contract that the federal government signed with Stellantis and their partner LG. There are undertakings in that contract for the Nexstar battery that relate not just to the completion of that, but to the undertakings here in Brampton, not far from here. Let me say, so the premise of your question is categorically wrong with respect to the federal government, full stop. But let me also add that I spoke with the global head of Stellantis 2 days ago. I expressed disappointment on their decision to shift where the Jeep production was. I reminded the global CEO of those undertakings and that partnership that's been there. I received assurances from the global CEO of two things. One, that they're looking at different model being produced in Brampton, and as well that support would be provided for workers. We're working with them, we're working with Unifor, working with the province to ensure that those workers for Brampton have more than just the opportunity, and they do have the opportunity to move to the additional shift that is being put on at Stellantis' other facility. But because there's 1,500 jobs coming with that third shift there, but also that they have comparable support to what they receive.
That sharp tone wasn't just media talk. Carney's message was direct, deliberate, and unmistakable. If Stellantis or any multinational thinks it can take billions from Canadian taxpayers and then abandon them at the first hint of Trump's subsidy pressure, they're in for a rude awakening. Carney revealed that he personally spoke with the company's global SHA not as a negotiator, but as a leader laying down the law. This isn't just about one automaker, it's about whether Canada can be bullied into submission by Washington's economic games. And Carney isn't the only one expressing anger. Ontario's Premier Doug Ford has taken that same fire directly to the people, and he didn't hold back. If you want, I can combine this and your previous passage into one seamless, high-impact story that reads like a major news expose told to copyright. Do you want me to do that?
Leaders from every level of Canadian government are lashing out at Stellantis today. The automaker says it's reneging on plans to make Jeeps in Brampton, Ontario, and moving production to the U.S. instead. The blame is falling squarely on U.S. President Donald Trump and his tariffs.
We need to start hitting back and hitting back hard. That's the only thing this person understands. Sorry, I just get pumped up talking about this guy. He drives me absolutely crazy. He does. And we aren't going to roll over. I'm not going to let him roll over Ontario, I'll tell you that.
Ford's words lit up the stage, a mix of anger, resolve, and pride. He called Trump's protectionist policies absolutely crazy and warned that Canada must fight back with everything it's got. For Ford, This isn't just an economic issue, it's a matter of national dignity. Then came the voice of the workers themselves. The head of Canada's auto union declared that the line in the sand is Brampton. This closure isn't just about one factory, it's about the message it sends. If the U.S. can bully one plant away, what stops it from doing the same to the rest of Canada's industries? That's why Ford's words and Carney's resolve resonate so deeply. They're not just responding to a corporate decision, they're fighting for the principle that Canada will never be treated as second tier.
Well, the head of the union that represents auto workers is also not convinced Ottawa's approach to the United States is working.
It doesn't stop at auto. They will keep coming until they have weakened us as a nation and as an economy. And that is something we can't stand for. So the moment is now. The line in the sand is Brampton, and we have to push back as a country.
Then came M8 copyright Lainey Jolie, the federal voice of consequence. While Ford and Carney delivered passion in policy, Jolie brought the hammer of accountability. Her message was simple. Canada didn't invest billions in these companies just for them to fold under White House pressure. She made it crystal clear that if Stellantis breaks its commitments, there will be legal and financial repercussions. No company, no matter how big, is above Canada's word or its workers.
Completely unacceptable. So we will fight for these jobs.
Canada's industry minister taking aim at Stellantis instead.
150,000 cars made by Stellantis are sold every year in Canada. And so Canadians know what to do when a company doesn't necessarily have the interests of Canadians at stake.
Jolie sent this letter to the company's CEO, threatening legal action, writing Stellantis has received billions of dollars in financial support over the decades and agreed to maintain its full Canadian footprint.
These companies making decisions to cower to the White House. Let's make sure that they understand that there are real consequences.
But as the Stellantis controversy grows, a larger question emerges. How can Canada secure its economic future without being chained to Washington's politics? That's where the conversation shifts to something much bigger: China's new EV offer. While the U.S. is busy threatening tariffs, China has made a bold proposal: drop Canada's 100% EV tariff, and in return, China will remove its crushing tariffs on Canadian canola. This move could unlock billions for Canadian farmers and open doors for new EV investments at home. Imagine this. Instead of chasing U.S. subsidies, Canada could build EV plants right here, powered by Canadian parts, Canadian labor, and Canadian clean energy, with global partners that value cooperation, not coercion. This isn't about picking sides between superpowers, it's about Canada finally picking itself.
Canada can take a much higher level approach to this. The Chinese government is saying, look, we hit you very hard with tariffs on canola and other things when all of a sudden you excluded us from the Canadian market for our electric vehicles with no proper justification. So maybe reopen some part of that discussion. Now, the pushback from some people in the auto industry was, no, that'll hurt us even more. But at some point, you've got to fish or cut bait. You can't keep telling Canadian consumers, no, pay twice as much for your electric vehicle because we've got to keep that part of the auto industry here. Canada's got to have a logical approach to this. Mr. Carney will be going to China. Minister Anand has been both in India and in China. They're both working on creating new trade routes, new partnerships around the world. That has to be done. And I think that this is all part of that wider discussion. The Americans can't always have it their way, that they remove things from Canada and then expect us to stay in lockstep with them, for example, to exclude the electric vehicles from China just because that's what they wanted to do.
Canada can take a much higher level approach to this. The Chinese government is saying, look, we were hit very hard with tariffs on canola and other goods, and then suddenly you excluded us from the Canadian market for our electric vehicles with no proper justification. Perhaps it's time to reopen some part of that discussion. The pushback from some in the auto industry has been, no, that will hurt us even more. But at some point, you have to cut bait. You can't keep telling Canadian consumers to pay twice as much for their electric vehicles just to preserve a portion of the auto industry here. Canada needs a logical, balanced approach. Mr. Carney will be going to China, and Minister Renand has already visited both India and China. They are working to create new trade routes and partnerships around the world. This is to be part of a wider discussion. The Americans can't always have it their way, removing things from Canada and then expecting us to stay in lockstep with them. For example, Canada shouldn't exclude electric vehicles from China just because of U.S. pressure. This momentous confrontation is bigger than one factory, one automaker, or one prime minister. It's about whether Canada will continue to be treated as an economic afterthought or stand tall as a nation that protects its workers, its resources, and its future. Mark Carney, Doug Ford, and M.A. Copyright Lainey Jolie may not agree on everything, but today they spoke with one voice. Canada will not be played, bought, or bullied. As the world shifts toward new alliances and emerging technologies, the real test for Canada isn't whether it can follow America's lead, it's whether it has the courage to lead itself. This is Immersion Headline Line News. If you believe in a strong, independent Canada that puts its workers first, make sure you subscribe, because this story is only just beginning.